hi everyone, it's Kerry Griffiths, a divorce financial planner, and I'm founder of Willow Brook Lifestyle Financial Planning. We all know divorce is one of the most stressful times of life, and for many women, that stress and worry can show up at night, impacting their sleep. So if this is you, then watch along, because today I'm delighted to be joined by a guest, Beatrix Schmidt. Beatrix is a sleep coach, a speaker, and the author of the Sleep Deep Method. I nearly got it wrong, Beatrix, and I know it's the Sleep Deep Method. So having struggled with insomnia and burning herself out in her mid-20s, she spent the last 10 years researching sleep and learning that in order for us to sleep well at night, we need to look much deeper than just how tired we are. She believes that sleeping well at night is a skill that we can all develop. Thank you, Beatrix, for joining us. Do you want to tell the audience a little bit more about yourself?
Yes, and thank you for having me. Well, basically, my story starts with me struggling, and obviously, if somebody's going through a divorce at the moment, I didn't go through divorce in my mid-20s, but I think when we look at similar dynamics in life, worry, stress, that's similar whether or not somebody's going through divorce or just general stress. So I think for me, one of the biggest things is that my life, I've chosen to design my life in a way that it became overly stressful, and especially physically. So I wasn't really looking after myself in terms of sleep. And I ended up with so much sort of sleep deprivation, tiredness, exhaustion, that I used to wake up with bleeding nose at night consistently.
Wow.
Right around the 2-3 o'clock in the morning. And it really scared me.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, there was nothing really much that could help me. And I think this is one of the things I often talk about. And, when we talk about sleep skills, yes, I was told I should go to bed early, and I was told that, I shouldn't consume so much coffee and caffeine, but it didn't make sense that it was all that.
Yeah.
I needed to change my lifestyle. And so that's kind of really where I got to now with the methodologies, that we got to look at our lifestyle. We got to look at all those behaviors, those routines, those habits that we have that can drive some of these sleep problems.
We talked about this earlier.
That's what I help my clients do, is really figure out what it's going to help them to have great sleep consistently.
Perfect. And we talked about what a great life skill this is earlier, didn't we, Beatrix? And it's such a key component of having a life that feels healthy and worthwhile. When your sleep is impacted, God, the outcome is just devastating.
Yes. And, it impacts, within the methodology, I work with 7 areas of life. And those are the physical elements, your body, how you're able to be healthy generally. Then we look at emotions, mental health, emotional ups and downs, getting cross with people, impatient, so on. Then we look at social elements, how we're able to interact with the people around us. Mm-hmm. Then we look at what I call spiritual, and I think often spiritual part is when people raise their eyebrows, and it's like, oh, what's that? Why do you talk about it with sleep? When we talk about sleep as peaceful, so why not talk about peaceful?
Yeah.
So spirituality, or that part, is very much about how you're helping your body to be able to peaceful inside. The mind chatter we sometimes hear when people don't sleep well at night. They problem solve, or they worry about things, and we talked about worry as well. Then we look at the intellectual part, our drive to want to succeed, and how much that impacts our sleep. Extending working hours, learning more, doing more. And then we look at environment. So it's not just your bedroom, but your home environment, your work environment, how much, again, that's supportive. And then occupational is the last piece, because whether or not somebody's a student, or they're full-time working, or they're full-time moms, that's still considered as an occupational element, as the biggest chunk of their daily life. So that's just a quick intro. Because I think some of these different things with the questions will fit that in as well into these areas.
That makes perfect sense. So what Beatrix and I have done is actually ask our clients, ask our audience on social media what they really wanted to know specifically around divorce and sleeping. And we've got 3 main questions that we're going to go through. So let's kick off, Beatrix. I've got the first one. So this was from Robin, and she says, I go to sleep fine, but wake at 4 a.m. with worry. Any tips?
Okay. So there's a couple of elements here. First of all, one of the questions I would have to Robin, and generally speaking, whoever listens to this, it's an important piece, and I get these kind of questions all the time. What time do you go to bed? Let's say Robin goes to bed at 10 o'clock. If she goes to bed at 10 o'clock and wakes up at 4 o'clock in the morning, that doesn't sound as bad as if somebody goes to bed at 12 o'clock and wakes up at 4 o'clock. Mm-hmm. So often when I get these kind of questions, look at your situation and see whether or not waking up earlier is driven by the fact that you go to sleep early. Mm-hmm. And if it isn't, then we look at the different scenario. Now, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock tends to be a kind of time that I always get asked about, because sometimes what can happen is your body is going through the day, probably under a little bit more pressure. And if you're worried at night, that means you're generally worried during the day as well. It doesn't just happen at night. It often shows up during the day as well. Okay. And when we keep going during the day and the worry is there, it could be just in the back of your mind because you're busy doing other things. What happens is we haven't dealt with it. Mm-hmm. It's just there. You haven't maybe addressed it. So when it's all quiet around us and we had a couple of hours sleep, and often what tends to happen is when we transition from a sleep stage to another sleep stage, you become more aware, you become more awake. And that's sometimes when these triggers or stressors kick in and the worry comes into your head. And that's the 3, 4 o'clock. And I hear this all the time. So first of all, one of the things I would say to Robin is it's okay that you've woken up. It's what you do to not let the worry take over and then take over the entire night. And I get this all the time. So the physical trigger could be there. It could be that maybe in your dream you were problem solving and it kind of created this physical trigger of, oh, I've got to wake up because this is dangerous. That's one element. But what you do when you're awake is the key to giving you the tips. So one of the things I always suggest to people, if this is a scenario, and worry is not just the only thing, it could be excitement, the same. So any emotions that we get charged up by, is look at how that's actually showing up in your life during the day. Because sometimes when you're now awake, it's too late to deal with it.
Okay.
But first step is look at your general daytime. See if you can make time to address those things. But also at night, differentiating the fact that you're aware that your worry came in and getting almost dragged into it is the separation. So for example, if you wake up with a worry, and it could be any type of worry, and even I wake up sometimes, my sleep isn't perfect either. If I wake up and something worries me, I then quickly rationalize it. Okay, yes, it is a real worry, but I can't do anything about it right now. So you take away the emotional charge, and then you're able to go back to sleep. What I would suggest with this particular thing is practice during the day. Literally, if you have a worry coming up at night, you will have that worry during the day. Make time, maybe half an hour, write it down, and start looking at how it's actually serving you. So let's say, okay, I'm worried, that means I need to come up with a solution, but how it's not serving you. It's making me sleep deprived. It's actually causing me physical problems, maybe higher heart rate, so on. And then you're able to really deal with it, separating it. Having time to deal with that worry is going to help you to actually address it and come to a conclusion that, you know what, this is the solution for it. And when we have a solution to a problem, generally we're less worried about it. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what I would like to suggest. And then different worries can affect us differently. So again, this is just a general advice. And if you do have a lot of worry, again, seek help for it.
That's brilliant. Thank you. So this next question, I'm really pleased came through because it talks about hot flushes, and I've just got to that stage. And I was saying to Beatrix before we started recording how annoying I find my hot flushes. I actually sleep really well, and they wake me again around this 3-4 a.m, probably more 4 a.m for me as well. And it's just really, really annoying to me. So the question is, hot flushes keep waking me. Any natural ways to sleep through?
Okay, so this is actually not that different from the previous question, just a different dynamic. So again, we've got a trigger or a stressor, which is the hot flush itself. Now this is different because it's the physical change in the body that wakes you up. But just like you said, often when I speak to people who go through similar things, it's the annoyance, is that frustration, is that thinking that, oh my God, this had ruined my night. But actually it hasn't.
Okay.
So one of the first things I always say in these scenarios is, don't make it bigger than what it is. You have to accept that you're going through hot flushes, but it does not mean you're ruining your night.
Okay.
So for example, often people think of sleep as this perfect, as soon as my head hits the pillow, I fall asleep, and I sleep through beautifully and peacefully, and then I wake up with full of energy. And this is generally something that I hear all the time, this perfection in sleep. But sleep isn't perfect.
Mm-hmm.
It's got ups and downs. The 4 indicators of good quality sleep, not perfect sleep, but good quality sleep, is up to 30 minutes of going to sleep, not 5 seconds. Okay. So if it takes you up to 30 minutes, it's totally fine. But we get annoyed by the fact that we haven't. Then, again, just because you wake up at night, it does not mean you have ruined your quality. So waking up with hot flushes does not mean that it's going to be ruined. You've got to accept the physical changes that your body is going through. So be kind to yourself. Rather than get frustrated.
Yeah.
And hot flushes aren't against you. They're just showing your body that there is change coming, and you've got to accept it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we wake up in the morning, again, a lot of people think that it's a quick switch of opening your eyes and you're going. But that's also a process. So again, allow yourself time to get going. And sometimes these are the things that come in when people wake up in the middle of the night, is then they expect themselves to jump out of bed and keep going. Again, in the morning, be kind to yourself. Make sure you nourish yourself so that you can get going. Hot flushes are quite typical in terms of that stage of life. It can vary depending on the person and how they go through it. The first thing I would suggest, there are lots of different natural things. You've got to find what works for you. I personally don't suggest any one thing because everybody works differently. Yeah. But I would suggest going to see someone as a professional to really figure out what will help you to make sure that maybe those hot flushes are less. Or if they are like that, then it's the acceptance part and being kind to yourself.
I love that. I love the thought of being kind to yourself. I think we could all use a bit more of that in life. So our last question, Beatrix. So this is from Jamie. I've never feel like I've had enough sleep, even when it's 9 or so hours. Why is this?
Okay, so this kind of also goes back into some of the things I mentioned before, this quality sleep. So every single person is going to be different. So sometimes, again, I come across people who really think that the ideal is 7.5 hours, but your body might not be made that way. Which is why, again, I really talk about a lot of really figuring out what your body needs. It's not just sleep, but how you're nourishing your body during the day. So I look at energy levels during the day and quality of the sleep at night. Okay. And if they're misaligned, even long amounts of sleep might not feel like you've had enough. And another thing I would like to pinpoint here, and this is really important, the person asking the question, or if this is something that feels like it's going on in your life, you could have a sleep disorder that you never thought of. Okay. So don't downplay it. go have an assessment, because some of the sleep disorders will continue to drive the tiredness and you might not even know about it. So if we take out the sleep disorders bunch, then a couple of things I would suggest for that is, again, look at these different elements of sleep. So your ability to switch off. Is it taking you longer? Maybe if it's taking you longer, then you're getting emotionally worked up, which again uses energy. So you might be emotionally more tired. Mm-hmm. Or it's physically more tired. So maybe you've done too much exercise. Again, that can have a significant effect on amount of sleep you need. Or we look at the mental tiredness, and I'll break it down into these three, because mental tiredness can cause a lot more tiredness because you can't sleep it off.
Okay.
You could wake up in the morning with 9 hours sleep, but your mind has been so active the 18 hours before you've gone to bed that you just never really managed to recover from it. And the other thing with this is, when I see clients who sometimes sleep, let's say 5-6 hours a night, and then they go to 9 hours a night, if the consistency isn't there, then often the quality can't follow.
Okay.
That's another thing I would ask who asked the question is, what's the consistency there? Are you sleeping maybe sometimes 6 hours and then you go to 9 and the 9 doesn't feel the same as the 6, right? This is where I ask my clients to keep a sleep diary so you can fine tune what is it that your body needs. You might be going to bed too early, which means that your quality of the sleep is different. You might be actually, your alarm in the morning, even though you slept 9 hours, your alarm is actually disrupting potentially your sleep cycle, which makes you feel like you're tired. But if you maybe give it 20 minutes more, you round up that sleep cycle and you'll be fine. So these are just a couple of things on that note. Look at your energy levels, how you nourish your body during the day, mm-hmm. which can drive this general tiredness or energy during your day.
Perfect. Beatrix, we have not even scratched the surface, I feel. There's so much more to discover and find out. I would love to have you back on as a guest, so hopefully you'll agree to that and we'll do another video at some point. But in the meantime, if people are listening and watching along and want to find out a little bit more, where can they go to find out more about you? I'm going to put your links in below, but do you want to give us kind of a bit of background how people could just get a bit deeper?
Yes, absolutely. So the methodology that I designed or authored is called the Sleep Deep Method. You can simply Google it, you'll find it, but you'll have the links below as well. Yes. I do a lot of work with sleep. You know, I've got various different masterclasses on different topics. I regularly run a sleep challenge, which really helps people to get to know their sleep and start to really overcome some of these challenges they have. And another thing that you can do is book yourself in for a complimentary sleep coaching session. So that's a one-to-one session. It's part of my business because often, you know, people are so confused about what they're supposed to do. Is this session helps them to figure that out. It's not a sales pitch. It's really getting to figure out what your sleep dynamic is and what can you do about it. So the reason I do complimentary sessions is because I know how it feels not to sleep. And at that time, nobody was willing to give me the time to really dig deep into it. And that's my way of giving back, to help people understand their sleep better. So if you go through to the link, you'll find all the different ways that maybe you can engage with me, or if you choose work with me. Again, social media is another way to find me. But yeah, generally the website has pretty much everything you probably need.
I'm sure we'll all be going along there now just to deepen our knowledge. So thank you so much, Beatrix. That was super, super helpful. And as I say, I'm definitely going to have you back along again soon. Thanks, guys. I hope you've all really enjoyed today's video. I know that it's something that a lot of my clients experience and feel. So just touching on some things that could really, really influence how you feel during the day when you've got that sleep sorted at night. I'll catch up with you all soon. Take care.